Hello to everybody who's already joined. I'm just going to give it a few minutes just to wait for more people to join, and then we'll kick off, okay? I'll just give it one more minute, and then we'll kick off, okay?
Yeah.
So we may as well kick off now. We've a good number of people on. So good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are, to everybody. Thanks for taking the time today. I know everybody has a busy schedule, so thanks for taking the time to join us today. Our webinar today is the third in our series of webinars, and we're going to focus on our WebTitan product. So just around, the evolution of WebTitan, how it's evolved as a product, and then we're going to do a specific focus on our new UI and also on OTG. So just to do some introductions briefly. So I'm Catherine. I'm the Customer Success Director at TitanHQ. I've been with the company just over 2 years. I'm joined by two more seasoned colleagues than I am. So Sean is with the company, I think 20 years, Sean, is it? Head of product development. 23, there you go. I'm aging you, or you're aging yourself. So Sean is head of our product development and also co-founder of the company, so lots of knowledge in that head of his. And then Derek Higgins is our director of technology operations, and I think with the company maybe over 10 years, or 10 or 11 years. So you couldn't be in better hands, I suppose, today. So just to some housekeeping rules, we really want these sessions to be quite engaging, and we want, lots of questions, and we want them to be worthwhile for everyone. So the best way to do that is to ask questions. So if you look to the right of your screen, you'll see that there's a control panel, and one of those drop downs is entitled questions. So if you just hit that arrow, if you have a question, and just type it in there. Obviously, Derek and Sean will be presenting, but I'll be monitoring the questions. And, I think the best way is to interrupt as we're going and to try and deal with the questions at a time when it's specific to the content being presented. So we'll try and do that as best we can, throughout the course of the hour. Any questions we don't get to, we will respond individually after the session. The other thing to be aware of is if you look at the handout drop down there is a handout here. Now, a lot of what we're going through today, especially with Derek, is more demo based. So it's probably more important for everybody to receive a copy of the recording. So that will be sent via email tomorrow. So I think that's all the important stuff. And now the more interesting stuff, I shall hand you over to Sean to run through.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you're tuning in from. So first of all, thanks for everybody for joining today. And as Catherine mentioned, I'm going to give a very quick overview of the main milestones of WebTitan Cloud as it's evolved over the last 10 years or so since we first launched. and I'll also give a brief overview of the internals of our endpoint agent for WebTitan. And as Catherine says, I'm going to try and keep this as short as possible. We want to leave plenty of time for questions at the end as well. Okay, so let's get started. I guess, first of all, I suppose, as you're all aware, at its most basic level, WebTitan identifies customers by the egress IP address that we're receiving the DNS request from. And we only respond to requests from customers with configured locations. So in other words, we operate as an open resolver. We don't operate as an open resolver. We have to be able to identify where the DNS requests are coming from. So our first release in 2013 provided protection and filtering for organizations with static IP addresses. This was quickly followed with support for dynamic IP addresses. And the next big milestone then was the introduction of users and groups from Active Directory and the ability to identify individual users and groups within an organization and see their activity in the history and reports. So this was achieved with a DNS proxy, which is a small virtual appliance which you would install in your network, along with a companion agent, the WebTitan Active Directory agent. So essentially, these two components combined facilitate us to attach a small piece of metadata to each DNS request that we receive on WebTitan Cloud, allowing us to identify and report on who made the request. So there's been several iterations on these features over the last couple of years, as we've added the ability to apply policies to users and groups, as well as supporting organizations that have an Azure environment or a hybrid Azure environment. I suppose then over the next couple of years, there was two kind of massive milestones to the project. The first was the introduction of Safe Search, which I'm sure, again, you're probably mostly familiar with. If enabled, would ensure that any unsafe content, such as pornographic content, wasn't returned by any search in results or search image results from the leading search engines. The other significant feature during this period was the release of our endpoint roaming agent for Windows, OTG. That stands for on-the-go agent, and this was designed so that we could allow organizations to continue to filter their employees while they're off the corporate network, using their laptop at home or while out and about on the road. So as this is kind of a really kind of critical component of WebTitan, I'll just go under the covers a little bit more in a minute of the kind of the internals of OTG. But essentially, it tags all DNS requests from your laptop with a unique device identifier, very similar to what we do with the DNS proxy, and allows us then to apply a specific policy on the cloud for that agent. So this kind of flexibility, for instance, then allows an organization to enforce, say, different policies for users when they're on the corporate network and when they're off network. So for instance, they might want a more strict policy when they're off the network and more lax when they're on the corporate network. So as mentioned then as well, using groups policies provide more granularity for admins. But again, through 2017 and 2018, we also added support for IPv6 for DNS requests. Obviously, the internet is kind of moving away a little bit from IPv4, still very prevalent, but getting IPv6 support there was quite important for us. 2019 and 2020, this was kind of a time when we focused primarily on security with enhanced cache poisoning protection, the introduction of DNSSEC, and we also introduced an on-the-go agent for the Mac OS platform. In 2021 and 2022, again, OTG work for Chromebooks. We came out with support for Chromebooks. This is particularly important for the education community, and we also, as I mentioned already as well, added Azure AD support for those organizations with either an Azure environment or a hybrid Azure environment. And finally, then I guess over the last 12 to 18 months, we've kind of done a kind of complete redesign work on our WebTitan front end and refactored all our APIs. And this was primarily to add better support for MSPs, provide new and improved reporting and analytics, and have easier OTG device management. So with that said then, let me just move on, and I'm just kind of going to give a quick overview of how OTG works internally for Windows. The architectures are slightly different between Windows, Mac, and Chromebooks, but on the Windows side of things, there's essentially 5 main components. There's the installer, which connects to, so when you deploy OTG, it can be rolled out with an ORMM. can roll out Intune or whatever MDM system that you're using. The first thing it's going to do is going to register with the WebTitan Cloud. It'll download a WebTitan CA cert and verify that the CA, that's by establishing a test connection to our cloud. The reason it downloads that WebTitan CA cert is because if a user goes to a blocked site, and if that site happens to be a HTTPS site, we have to present a block page, and the block page has a fake HTTP certificate signing it. So by installing the WebTitan CA, your browser won't give a certificate warning when the block page is presented. Some of the things that the installer does as well is it'll store the master configuration, some more details about how it communicates with WebTitan Cloud, such as the RPC URL, as well as the device key for the device itself. The OTG service then is a Windows service which monitors the system, detects when there's any network or network adapter changes, so it can switch from operating in OTG mode to going back to whatever the settings were pre-been enabled. The configuration grabber, again, this is something that's quite important. It runs, when the agent starts up. It also runs on a periodic basis when it polls WebTitan Cloud to see has there been any device configuration changes. So this may include any exceptions for when OTG may have to fall back to a pre-OTG settings. Derek will go into this maybe in a few minutes. He'll show you how that works from the front end point of view. The configuration grabber is also responsible for generating the unbound configuration. So this includes basically the resolver IP addresses that the Windows device will forward the requests onto. Unbound itself, some of you may be familiar with this. It's a popular open source resolver that we use to forward the request. So again, like the DNS proxy, which mentioned earlier on, it will attach a small piece of metadata identifying this agent so that when we receive the request in the cloud, we can apply the appropriate policy to it. And finally, then the OTG UI. This is the tray icon you see when you start up OTG. Just indicates the status of the OTG service, and that'll be started then for each logged in user. So with that said, then I'll hand over control to Derek, who can talk you through the features of the new UI. If I can find where to hand over control. Spare me a second.
No problem, Sean.
Okay, Derek, you should have now.
Sean, in terms of the availability of that the UI you've just been through there, like most customers should be on that now, but there's still some that are to be migrated.
Yeah, so there's a cohort of users that would be still on the 4.16 old UI, and then there's another cohort already been migrated onto the new UI, which we've codenamed Ergo. The plan is over the next several months is to get everybody migrated onto the new user interface.
Okay, so just anybody who hasn't been migrated already, it will be done over the next few months.
Correct.
Perfect.
Great. Just to confirm, Catherine, Sean, can you see my screen there okay? Hovering over overview.
Perfect.
Got it,
Great.
Derek, yeah.
So thanks very much, Sean. Thanks for that intro. As Sean said, we've been through the iterations of WebTitan over the years and what company brought us to this point today. So what I'll do today is I will bring us through the new interface. I'll go through it from the top level, which we're viewing here, say an MSP level, and then drill down into a customer level. So again, fully multi-tenanted as you'd be used to as well. So without further ado, I'll go through this. So on this screen, what we see is an overall statistics for yesterday. So you can see total requests yesterday, the 10th of May, was this amount requests, average, allowed, and blocked. This is always showing you for yesterday's stats. I'll show you where to show today's, but this will give you an overview of all your customers for the previous day. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drill into this customer here, and what's brought up here is the dashboard for this particular customer. So you could have hundreds of customers, thousands of customers in here, and you can search them, find a particular customer, and in here you can find the information relevant to that particular customer. On here, we get an overall stats of today. So you can see how many is allowed, how many requests blocked throughout the day. And generally, you see a nice snaking graph in there. And if you select different date ranges within the reports, that'll go through shortly, you'll also see a nice snaking graph within there as well. But if I scroll down, it gives you some nice details about the requests, unique domains, allowed and blocked, categories and domains throughout the day, and your users as well. So as Sean mentioned earlier, you can have your Active Directory integration with DNS proxy and WADA, and you can have your on-the-go agent deployed across all of your laptops and Macs and Chromebooks. And you can have a hybrid of both as well, which we see in a number of occasions. Within here, there's some shortcuts to most popular kind of tabs that people would be going to. So adding your location, so adding your public IP address. If this customer has a new office coming online and you want to get the DNS forwarding level in place, just to get that level of protection in place immediately, you can simply come in here, click add location, add in that IP or IP range, and then set the forwarders to be the WebTitan Cloud IPs. You can add allowed and blocked domains, and you can create policies. So multiple policies can be created and custom policies, and they can be attached to different locations, so IP addresses, attached to different users, attached to different OTG agents, and also groups if you have the AD integration in place. So I'm just going to skip on to the recent traffic. So the recent traffic gives you a snapshot of the most recent traffic coming through the system. There's more detailed reports in the reporting tab here, but this aspect here is to show you recent traffic. Very useful for troubleshooting. We see our support team and using this quite a lot, and to be talking our customers and yourselves through this during calls and tickets as well. So if you had, for complete example, if you had someone saying, I'm having issues getting to Amazon or Google, whatever, let's say Google, what we would say to do is, while you're on the phone with that customer, while we're on the phone with the customer, do that search again. So try finding it, and in here, search for Google. So you can see, let's say it's video.google they're having trouble getting to, but we see it's allowed here and it's in entertainment and videos. So, okay, that's not being blocked. But if it's say a website like a news website or a magazine website or something like that, that can be pulling from hundreds of locations. WebTitan enforces a most restrictive policy. So if some of those domains are blocked or one of those domains is blocked, the site could be blocked as well, and that could be the underlying problem in there, why it's getting blocked. So the top level, the Google isn't getting blocked, but one of the content delivery domains might be getting blocked. So if we look at videos, video.google, we can see that was at 1416. What you could do then is search for around that time in here and see in and around that time, was there a blocked site around that time as well. You might see the likes of doubleclick.net or something like that in there. You can add that to the allow list, and that will resolve the issue for that particular user or that particular customer. It's just a nice handy feature in there. It's a quick search, it's a quick snippet of time, and it'll show you the most recent entries that have come through the system. Then moving on to the content filtering. So in here, this is our policies. So as I said earlier, you can have multiple policies. You can have as many policies as you would like, and you can have one policy for everybody, or you can have very granular policies to a per user, group, OTG agent, and so on. So you can create them in here, or you can edit an existing one. So if I edit an existing one, let's say we'll go VPN users. So we click in here, we can see the name, the description, so remote staff VPN policy, safe search is enabled. So this will enforce Google Safe Search and so on for searches when you're pointing to WebTitan. That will enforce Safe Search regardless of the browser settings. So even if the browser is set to Safe Search off, this will enforce it on. And you can block and allow unclassified traffic.
Can I just ask you some questions there, Derek, that are coming in?
Yeah, absolutely.
So does allowing a domain override the category when the category is blocked?
Correct, good question, and the answer is yes. So if you have a allow list for that policy, that allow list will override the blocked category. So an example I would use there a lot would be you might be blocking social networking as a category, but you want to allow LinkedIn for business purposes. What you would do is you would add linkedin.com as an allow list, but still block social networking in your categories. And then people can access LinkedIn, but they won't be allowed to get to Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, whatever they're using these days. They won't be able to get to those, but you'll be allowed to get to LinkedIn. So there's multiple levels. You can have a policy level. Sorry,
just
Sean,
want to add something there. With that example you're giving there, LinkedIn.com, you probably want to add in several other domains as well. So it'll be images.linkedin.com. It won't be just linkedin.com that you'd have to add. It'll be a whole slew of other domains which will have to be performed as well if you're blocking that social networking category.
Yeah. So there's multiple levels of that as well. So you can have an allow list and a block list per policy, or you can have one for the customer. So at the customer level, you can add allow and block lists, which is actually here on the next tab, which is domains. You can add allow lists in here, and these would apply to all the policies. These would override the blocking in all the policies.
Okay, so sorry, Derek, there, this might be a more relevant question for Sean, actually, just from James. So James is wondering, when it comes to exporting a policy, are there any plans to allow exporting of comments as well?
I wasn't aware that they weren't being exported, but we can certainly include it as a feature request, absolutely.
Great. Sorry, just in relation to what you just said there, Derek, just a question from Robert. So you can't whitelist LinkedIn at the top level by subdomain?
You can. So what you can do is you can add include subdomains. So when you're adding an allow list, so if I come in here and I click on add domain, add allow domain, you see here include subdomains and log requests or not. So what you could do in there is you could put linkedin.com, select a particular policy if you want to apply to a particular policy, or leave it blank for all, and include subdomains. Would include the likes of your videos.linkedin.com, whatever that might be. That will include all subdomains. So you can go to the top level domain like that as well.
Great, thanks, Derek.
Yeah. Any others in there?
No, we're up to date for now. All
Perfect.
good.
Perfect. So going through the policy, so we come with 3 predefined policies, so essential, enhanced, and optimum. And if you hover over these will show you. So the essential is blocking the malicious sites. All the malicious categories will be blocked by default in there. Enhanced would block all the malicious categories, but also your unwanted material, like pornography and violence and so on as well. Then the optimal would go another level, so it'll include all of the above, but also include alcohol, dating, gambling, nudity, weapons, and so on as well. Or, as I mentioned, you can create a customized policy. And if you click on customize, it'll bring up our categorization. So we have the web here into 53 predefined categories. And if there's a tick beside it, it means you're blocking that category. So you can tick or untick whichever categories you would like to allow or block, depending on your needs or your customer's needs, and click on save. So that will now be in place. And as I was showing, or I'll show in a moment, is for your locations, for your users, for your groups, whatever way you've rolled it out, or your IP addresses, your public IPs, you can assign this particular policy to any of the above or multiples of the above as well. So you would set your policy, and then you can make it apply to users, groups, or locations as well. So domains, thanks for the question. I believe it was Rob. Forgive me if I didn't take in the name properly. So we've covered this. So you can add your allowed and blocked domains and the different levels of that. So you have it at the policy level, you have it at the global level, and you have it at the customer level as well. And it is a top-down approach. So say you're an MSP, you've got a few thousand customers, you add allowed lists at your level of access, that will apply to all policies below that as well. So it is, say, a top-down approach to those as well. Then your block page. So the block page here, you can tailor the block page per customer. You can have the block page with your logos and interface and wording as well. And that can be done at the, say, MSP level and also at the end user level. So at your customer level as well. Then skipping over to environment, this is what I spoke about earlier, adding your locations. So if you are doing the DNS forwarding, I'd always recommend when you're going using WebTitan or you're bringing on a new customer, best thing to do is to get it in there, get your security in place straight away. So add the IPs of your offices and your locations and set the forwarders to come to us. You're not getting user identification or anything in those cases, but you're getting your security straight away within 5 minutes. Once you have that in place, you can then put on the AD integration, the OTGs, whatever you would like to do after that, but at least you know that your locations are safe and being protected by WebTitan immediately. So in here is where you would add your IPs, and we support a number of flavors. So static IP, dynamic IP, and dynamic DNS I'll start with. So static IP is, as it says, it's a static IP or a static IP range that you'd have for your office. You can simply add that in here and give it a name. We support dynamic IPs as well. So this is if you don't have a static IP for your locations, you can install an agent within your network. And we'd always recommend installing that on a device or a machine that is always on, because that'll be pinging out to the cloud, to WebTitan Cloud, and will update the IP address if your public IP ever changes. And we also support dynamic DNS. So this supports the likes of no IP or Dyn DNS. An example here is we filter for public buses in a region, and they've a router in each bus. Every time the bus turns off, turns back on, it gets a new IP. There's nothing in that network because it's a bus that you can install the dynamic agent on. So dynamic DNS is perfect for here. What our customer and ourselves did here was we worked with no IP. We got dynamic host names for these buses, and we resolve against that. So they're pointing to us, and we're resolving, and we're resolving that host name and keeping the IP address up to date at all times.
Can I just ask you a question there, Derek? Just a question from Kevin. How do we gain insight into which device is accessing a particular website? Right now, all we get is the external IP of the network and user anonymous.
So in that case, what's happening is you're probably doing, Kevin, you're probably doing DNS forwarding at the network level or at your domain controller level. So at that level, we're just seeing the DNS traffic. We don't have eyes inside the network, so we're not identifying the users. For us to get down to the level of knowing what users or what group and so on like that, you would need to have the Active Directory integration, which would be DNS proxy and WADA, and that's in your environment. And then if you want to identify people while they're outside of the office, you can install OTG on Windows laptops, on Macs and Chromebooks, and that will identify those users when they're out of the office. So we don't have eyes on the user level without some sort of eyes inside the network like that.
Okay, now I don't know if this maybe this question in from David, and we may need to go back to you separately, David. Like we can respond after to know the specifics. But I've had some issues with OTG, and I had to uninstall. Where is the latest available OTG version to install?
Yep, so the latest version would always be on our docs portal, and I don't know if anyone else can bring it up there, but it'll always be in our docs portal, so support.titanhq.com. It would be in there under the OTG heading, and what we'll do actually at the end of this, when we're stop sharing screens, I'll actually get it up here and I'll put it into the chat, or we'll get it sent out to everybody after the call as well. But the latest version will always be there to download.
And just something else there in relation to OTG, Derek. Will there be an OT, or maybe it's a question for you actually, Sean, will there be an OTG agent developed for RDS servers?
Probably not in the roadmap at the moment, but we'll certainly, again, add it as a feature request. If we can get maybe, more kind of details on the use case there, that'd be fantastic.
Great, thanks guys.
Perfect. So the other two aspects here, so I've covered static, dynamic, and dynamic DNS. Roaming is actually auto-created when you install OTG, and virtual is can also be auto-created when creating or installing OTG. Virtual can also be used as eDNS tagging, so extended DNS or DNS mask. It's generally used in the ISP level or in the network controller level, whoever controls the actual network level traffic. We do have some integrations within there as well. The next tab then would be devices. So this is actually your OTGs, the OTGs that you have installed. So this will show you the user who is last logged into these devices, last contact, what type of device it's on. So you can see here Windows 32-bit or Mac OS and so on. And then the device exceptions. So I'll show how to create a device exception in a few moments, but what is a device exception? So as I mentioned earlier, you can have a hybrid. You can have the DNS proxy and WADA installed for user identification within an Active Directory environment. But when people go home, you want them filtered as well. So you have OTG installed those laptops. When those laptops come back into the office, you don't want OTG sending all DNS requests out to the cloud because you won't be getting internal DNS resolution. So the device exceptions are, you can list the IPs of your offices. And what those will do in the exception would be telling OTG when you're in a network behind one of these IPs or this IP, back off. Don't set the DNS to be the local host. Back off when you're behind these IPs and let the local DNS DHCP be handed out. And I'll show how to create those and attach them as well.
So just had a few questions come in now, Derek. So we're probably as well to go through them as they come in. So can you get reports on different users on the same machine with OTG?
Yes. So one little caveat there, because it might be related to the RDP question earlier on, I'm not sure, but if it's a virtual desktop, so if it's multiple users logged into a virtual desktop at the same time, that is what Sean was talking about, that what would need some investigation. But if it's a laptop that, say, I'm logged into now, and I log out here, and then Sean comes into this office and logs into the same laptop, yes, OTG identifies that and will identify us correctly in those cases. Because what OTG does is it appends the user who's currently logged in to the laptop to the DNS request, so we're identifying correctly. So if one person logs out and someone logs into the same device, we do capture that and we do filter that person correctly and identify them correctly. And I have the reporting here as well, which will show you what the reporting will look like as well.
Brilliant. So a question here from Kevin. We'll give this a shot, Kevin, but we may need to follow up with you afterwards. So I'm having an issue with a business critical web app being blocked. I have allowed the domain and subdomains, but it still gets blocked. There are no ads on this page. It's returning a grid view from a database. Tech support haven't been able to assist. Can you? Again, that might be something that you need to delve into separately, Derek, but might be a bit too complex for this session, but we can follow up with Kevin, I presume, separately.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if we get the ticket number in there, I'll get the guys to follow up on us straight after this.
Great. So then a question from Rich: where is the OTG installer customized for for customer? Sorry, where is the OTG installer customized for customer?
So I would imagine this might be the device exceptions. So I'll skip over here because it is quite relevant in here. So within, apologies, no, I'll bring this up. So the device exceptions are in here. So you would add a device exception. So you'd add a name and so on, and it will show up within the fields in here. You'd then select the one you would like to make additions to or make edits to, and add exception rule. So as you can see here, it's a bypass OTG or use specific resolver. You would add in the IP address, say it's bypass OTG. You'd add in the IP address, the public IP or range of the office, and click on say add. Then you can append this to the OTGs or append it to a number of OTGs at one time, and that would put it into place as well.
Great.
If the question might be related to how do we know where to install OTG, which customer to install OTG, each customer account has a unique key that on installation you pointed to the unique key, and that will install OTG against the correct customer level for you as well.
Great. So Dan is just saying that he uses JSON settings to set exceptions. How does this change in the new UI? Does the JSON go away?
That's it. That's really good, and that's exactly what this was. JSON is really good if you know JSON. Not everybody does know JSON, and we have to obviously develop and make it as easy as possible for people. So the exemptions actually removes the necessity for the JSON configuration, but we do know people still like to use JSON as well. So we do still have the capabilities within the interface in here to create JSON level configurations as well. So we have created pretty much a more user-friendly JSON configuration here, because you're not actually having to do the JSON side of it, but you do still have both options. You can still do the JSON if needs be.
So then another question on JSON from a person called Jason, which is ironic. So Jason is asking, so with the IP exception, there is no need to modify via JSON file. Does that require AD?
Does that? So correct me if I'm wrong here, Sean. So with the device exceptions, if you create the exceptions for the back-off IP with the exceptions like I showed here, it does remove the necessity to use the JSON to do it. Does it require AD? It doesn't, but that means if you're in that location and you're backing off, it means we're not identifying that user. If you're doing DNS forwarding, if you're using DNS proxy and WADA in-house, we are then identifying that user off the AD, off their Active Directory information rather than the local level.
Okay. Just a question in relation to WADA. If you have the WADA agent installed on server and AD integrated and users still show anonymous, what could be the issue?
It's a good question. So you're always going to see some anonymous traffic. There's always going to be some, because it might be a laptop that is logged out but not turned off. So that will be sending DNS like updates, looking for updates and things like that in the background. So there's actually nobody there to identify. You might have servers connecting and sending out DNS requests as well. It's amazing how much a box sitting in the corner just connected to the network actual activity is coming out of that. But also say if you're doing the AD integration and there's Macs or there's Linux servers or someone running Ubuntu on their laptops, open source like that, we're not identifying those. WADA and DNS proxy would not identify those. It is AD joined devices only. There might be BYOD devices in there. I suppose it's a long answer to say there isn't one reason really. But what I would say, one little tip is if you have more than one domain controller, do install WADA on all of them, because we have seen cases where people had a DR domain controller, but it was still actually accessible, and people were actually authenticating against that DR. So I would always recommend installing WADA on all domain controllers, even if you think nobody ever authenticates to them. It might be that that's the case. We have seen that rare, but we have seen that in the past.
Like I think that the whole WADA conversation could be a webinar in itself. There's a lot going on under the covers there as well. You know, from the actual agent which actually goes and identifies and performs the mappings. There's a lot of different techniques it's using to figure out what user is logged on to what IP address, and that's going to generate a lot of DCOM events. So we've got to basically fine tune that so we're not overwhelming your network with requests to figure out this information either. So it's a balancing act, and it could be cases as well where sometimes the information may be stale or a new mapping may not be picked up for maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes.
Great. James is asking if a user is logged on locally on the laptop or desktop, that is the user account is not, sorry, that is the user account is not on the domain, can this be identified on the reports?
If they're using OTG, it would see that. It would see that user logged in. If they're not connected to the domain and you don't have OTG, but you're using DNS proxy and WADA, we would not identify that because we're looking for that login event. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Sean, but I don't believe we would identify that.
I won't identify the actual user. We'll still be able to identify the internal IP address. So
yeah.
You know that IP address belongs to that particular machine. You'll be able to identify the requests.
Yeah.
Great. And Robert is just asking, he's saying, we have laptops that travel from office to home that we plan on running OTG on for home use. Will that be an issue with WebTitan running on our office networking, our office network?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And that's exactly what it is. You could say we've planned and designed for. So what you would do there is you would have the exemption in place for your OTGs. So when they're in the office and your office has a static IP, OTG will not kick in when they're in the office. As soon as they bring it home or they go to the coffee shop with their laptop, whatever it might be, OTG will kick in and filter those users when out of the office.
I don't know if this is kind of a statement or a question, or we'll see if we can address it. So Rich is just saying he needs a place to download a complete installer for each customer. Is that? I'm not.
Installer. So we supply it as an MSI file that can be rolled out then via the likes of Intune or individually. I'm not sure if there's any more details there, but we'd supply it as an MSI file. Yeah, we'll follow up. And as I said, we'd do the device configuration install key. You'd install that. There's an individual key, as you see here, for each customer, so you know that's hitting the right customer account.
Okay. So Adam is just asking, is saying he's had an issue with installing service packs. After installation, the device no longer has a DNS address after restart. Devices have OTG too. What do you think? So after installation, the device no longer has a DNS address after restart.
After installation of a service pack, you restart and you lose DNS.
Yeah, you did no DNS.
What would that? I'm not sure. I'd say that's one we need to follow up on, Sean, is it? I haven't come across something like that before.
I can't think of that. Certainly, internally here, we keep up to date on Windows service packs all the time. I haven't seen that internally or heard of it.
Well, I definitely want to follow up on or give her a support call or email. We'll follow up though. Yeah.
I'll follow up here anyway, so don't worry about that.
Yeah, perfect.
How can you identify mobile phones on the reports?
So we can't identify. We don't have a RM or MM remote mobile manager, I think it is. We don't have an agent for mobile phones or handheld devices like that at the moment. It is Windows, Macs, and Chromebooks. And we've got the AD integration for AD level as well. For actual mobile devices, this is something that we have looked at, but we don't have an agent for mobile devices. It gets extremely complex and difficult in those cases because you can be going from a Wi-Fi network to a 4G network to a 5G network, a 3G network. It gets tricky at times, but it would definitely be a nice one to have.
Yeah, the mobile phones, of course, can still be filtered well on the corporate Wi-Fi, but no way to actually identify them other than by the internal IP address, which again is likely going to be a DHCP address, so probably not that useful.
Yeah, I suppose from a security viewpoint and different things like that, I've had conversations with customers about BYOD devices and things like this before. Is definitely network segregation would be a good idea. So for BYOD devices or for mobile devices like that, the Wi-Fi they're connecting to maybe has the guest that is separate to the corporate network or some sort of separation like that as well. And you can have. We won't identify that traffic, but what we can do is you can have a specific policy for that traffic then as well. Great.
And then James is also asking, how do we get OTG and can we have both OTG and WADA?
So again, OTG is downloadable via our docs portal, and we'll get that sent on to everybody. And can you have OTG and WADA? And the answer there is yes. So WADA, and it works with DNS proxy. That is in a network, in an Active Directory network, and they work together to identify people in the AD. OTG is designed for people when they're outside of the office, so you can filter them when they're out of the office. It is not AD aware, so it's identifying the user that has logged into the laptop at the time. That's again a long-winded answer to it. The answer is yes, you can. Okay. Absolutely.
I might just ask 2 more questions, Derek, and maybe we might go back to the content then, because I'm just conscious of the time.
No problem.
For OTG, another James, for OTG installer MSI, is there an option to update as opposed to an uninstall, reinstall?
I'll take that one, Derek. So we do have an action within the JSON configuration to do an update. But I think what we've found mainly, though, a lot of our customers, they're using Intune or some other, ORMM to kind of update and manage their devices. And for them, a lot of the time, it's just as simple to do an uninstall, reinstall from their, when they're pushing it out to hundreds of devices. It's a lot simpler to do it that way. But there is an option within the JSON configuration. It's not something we've used too often, but we do have the ability there, yeah, sure, if we need to push out a hotfix.
Great. And then another, James, is there a report that allows customer consumption so that we can bill per seat? And then how is this handled with location DNS in place?
So
I can take that one as well. Or do you want to take that, Derek?
No, go on ahead, and I can show the reports then afterwards.
Yeah, no, certainly what I was going to say, listen, getting per seat billing for DNS is difficult because unless they're using OTG or using WADA, we'd have to measure it on basically DNS requests. But it's a timely request because we do have a roadmap feature to provide better billing for our WebTitan customers. And the intent certainly initially is maybe to look at maybe tying it into Office 365 billing.
Okay, great.
Good.
Sorry, there's just 2 more here, and then we'll go back to the content if you don't mind. So Kevin is saying he manages a handful of small agencies that do not run Active Directory. Is it possible to use OTG on each of the computers there? Each agency does have its own static IP and is currently forwarding web requests to WebTitan servers. This works, but does not give us detail on the device visiting a particular site.
Yeah, it's a good case, and you can do this. OTG can be installed in these smaller environments and static environments like this, even if they're desktops. The one thing, Kevin, to keep a very close eye on when doing this is to test it first, because if there's internal resolution, we would need to add an exemption for those. So if there's internal domains or internal resources, they would need to be added as device exceptions for these installations. So if you were, say, let's take TitanHQ, if you're trying to get to TitanHQ.local, but I had OTG in place without any exemptions, I wouldn't be able to resolve that because that's an internal domain, whereas OTG will send all requests out to the cloud for resolution. So the answer is yes, you can install OTG, no problem whatsoever. Just make sure to add in I'm going to add in here, make sure to add in a use specific resolver. You can add in the resolver IP and the domain name. So as I was saying there, if it was TitanHQ.local, apologies, I cannot type and talk at the same time. So I would put in here and my resolver, whatever it was, the internal resolver. So any requests for this domain would go to this resolver. That's the only caveat when doing it that way. Perfectly fine. Absolutely, we have a lot of people doing that, but it might need some testing there.
Great. And then the last question here is, does OTG give device location?
Does OTG give device location? It does. It does, yes. So OTGs will give a location. If I come over here, so you will see the user. Actually, in my recent traffic, it would show in here as well. But it does give you a location name as well. Correct, it does.
Great.
Yes.
Great. I
just want to clarify one little thing from earlier as well. We're just talking about billing and usage and aspects like that as well. Just in case we don't bill on volumes of DNS requests, and just in case people may have thought that we don't bill on volumes of DNS requests at all. That's always agreed on a user level.
Yeah, perfect. Great, Derek. Sorry, I'll leave you alone now.
No, not at all. Keep them coming. It's always good to utilize the time. So it's pretty much the last few things I want to show is the reporting suite. So within here, we've got behavioral reports, blocked reports, security reports, trend reports, history reports. Quite a mouthful, and try to say them all at one go. But this will give you a lot of data about what's happening in your environment or your environments. These can also be offloaded as well. The data here can be offloaded. So we can see here behavioral stats for categories for the date range, the 1st to the 3rd to the 11th to the 5th. So we can just see the overall request there, the top categories that were hit, the percentage of requests for these as well. The next, and you can do that per user group, all again depends on your own rollout as well and what requirements you'd have in there. The next would be the blocked reports. So this will show you the actual blocked trends and what you're seeing in there. So again, I've gone by category. We can see here download sites, pornography, business, education, whatever it might be in here. And you can see the total volume requests to each and the percentage of the requests in that range as well. The next would be security reports. So there's a number of different ones in here. So we can see these IPs were the ones that sent the most requests to domains that would be classified as malicious or malware or compromised type sites. Next would be trend reports. So this gives you trend reports on DNS volumes and flow. And again, as I said earlier about that snaking kind of a graph that you would see over the long periods, Monday to Friday, it builds up, then it goes down on weekends and up from Monday to Friday and so on. This will give you an idea of when your busiest times of the days are. We have got, say, stadium across the world as well. We have a number of stadiums that we filter the Wi-Fi in, and that's a really interesting one because, as you can imagine, very little to nothing for maybe 80% of the time. Then there's a game, there's an event, there's a concert, skyrockets through the roof for those few hours, and then back down again. They're really interesting types of graphs, but it's useful to see because people use that to see, okay, do we have enough Wi-Fi coverage? Do we need more bandwidth? Different things like that. It's useful to have them for that type of information. And then last but definitely, oh sorry, yeah, go on. Yeah.
Sorry, Derek. Just a very quick one. Renee is wondering whether reports can be sent automatically to email addresses.
So this will be the scheduled reports. I might divert to Sean on that one for an update there.
So yeah, so in the old UI, that's possible. It's a feature request which we have for this new UI. It's not possible at present, but it's coming soon. Is all I can say.
Great, thanks, Sean.
Perfect. And then last but not least, the history report. So this gives you all the information that's there. So the user, the timestamp, the date range, the category. You have a number of search criteria that you can utilize in here as well. So you can search by users, you can search by locations, you can search by the policy in place. You can search by a number of different aspects in there as well. So if I search this, there we go, we can see the user. This is a question from earlier on as well. Does OTG give a location? It does. I just searched for this location because I actually knew that was an OTG location, and I'm actually seeing the user information in here as well. And I given all that. Yeah.
Sorry, Derek. Is OTG installation done per device?
So yes, it would be installed per device, but it can be mass rolled out via RMM, like Intune or aspects like this as well. Yeah.
Great.
It's a very short line of code, pretty much. Mainly, the main aspect of it is this OTG installation key, so that you are installing against the correct customer. And we can send on more data after this about rolling it out. There is docs there about Intune and different aspects there as well. But yeah.
just regarding reporting, in the reporting view, will we finally be able to filter by domain, or will we have to try and build a custom report for that?
So currently you can, in the, say, the recent traffic, you can search by domain. So as I was showing there, if I look for google.com, it'll start showing that. Or if I look for, say, Facebook, I'm not sure if there's any there. Yeah, there is. You can see it's blocked there. In the history reports, I'd have to jog my own memory here, but effective action, external, internal IP, that would need to be, that isn't in here. So I do have the head of R&D in the line. I'm always hesitant to say if we have it in one, I'd imagine we can get it in the other at some stage, but I'm not a
I'm
developer.
just wondering, Derek, would it be under the behavior reports? I can't remember where it is there either, but it might be under behavior reports.
Maybe.
Where you can drill down by domain.
Oh, yes, by domain. By domain, you're correct. You're correct. It's in there for behavior and blocked reports and different aspects. It is actually already in there. There we go.
Right.
Just conscious of time, I think I should pause there and see if there's any other questions, Catherine, that we can get fielded in a few minutes.
No, we've actually managed to get through them all, Derek. So, yeah, it's great. Yep, we've got through them all. And like obviously there was some there that will require us to get back to the individuals, and that's fine. We will do that. We will be following up. So don't panic if we didn't get to your question. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, just to thank everybody again for their time. It was great, and we really appreciated the effort in terms of all the questions that we received. It's always great to get that level of question. I've just got another one in now, so I may as well just ask it. When there is a WebTitan outage, what is the fastest workaround?
Sorry, Kat, can you repeat that, please?
Sorry, because it's just when there is a WebTitan outage, what is the fastest workaround? Jason is just asking this.
Yeah, so hopefully there won't be any outages. Would be the first thing that I would say there. But especially with this new interface, is we're building out robustness and failover and aspects like that. So even though we're providing the two IPs, there's actually a lot of servers running behind the scenes there. It's fully load balanced, everything in there. So always using our two IPs would be number one. Other than that as well, you'll always have failover there. OTG will be the same. Now that'll be using both resolvers as well. The same with all the different types of deployments. Always using the two IPs is key in there as well. Behind the scenes, for say, we're really expanding and getting really strong on our, stronger, I should say, on our monitoring, alerting, proactive, getting ahead of these, seeing trends, seeing all these sort of things. That's the main thing. I suppose it's like anything. If there is ever an outage or anything like that, and you need an instance response, the DNS, I suppose. There's open resolvers out there, but we're working on different aspects like that as well. But I suppose my key point there would be to always use both IPs, because it can't all go down at the one time if you're using both IPs. Yeah.
Okay. So we've just had a few. Travis has just kind of snuck in another question there, so let's try and get them done. So I have two customers that are losing access to mapped drives that are assigned via group policy from their domain controller. They have DNS forwarding to WebTitan IPs in place from their domain controller. I have an open ticket, and the last direction was to disable AV and test, but we cannot disable AV for these customers. Would you have any other suggestions?
So unusual because the DNS forwarding happens outside of the domain, so we wouldn't be actually looking at anything internal like mapped drives or anything like that. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It should definitely need investigation there, maybe even a screen share with one of the guys in support. That should be my next protocol there,
Okay.
anything like that.
Yeah,
would definitely.
the only thing I can think of there maybe is that there's some domain getting blocked or some category is blocked, which is affecting the mapping.
Or maybe.
Okay. We probably need to follow up separately. There are a few more there, but I'm just conscious of the time, guys, so we can, as I said, anything we didn't get to, we can follow up. So so thanks for your time. As I mentioned at the start of the session, you will get an email tomorrow with a recording of it. There's also a survey at the end of this that's auto-generated, so we're really trying to work on our webinars and constantly improve them. So we would appreciate your feedback and anything you think we can do better. So we're always open to suggestions. So that's it, guys. That's the end of our webinar. So thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks everyone for joining. Great questions.
Thanks. Cheers.
Okay.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye bye.